Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fashion Sustain stage. My name is Geraldine de Bastien and I have the honor of being your stage host for today and tomorrow and would like to welcome you of our first panel of the day, Be Clean Water My Friend, Fresh Views on Plastic and Fashion. So as we all know, plastic has infiltrated all areas of life and not just from a consumerist point of view but also from a biological one. Around 73% of fish caught in the mid-ocean depth in the Northwest Atlantic have microplastic in their stomachs. And even the fish living in the Mariana Trench at the bottom of the ocean, the deepest part of the seas, are all eating microfibers today. That's why today we want to take a closer look at this panel of how the plastic in the fashion industry is impacting our fresh and clean water supplies and how generally water, plastic, and fashion are interconnected. We're going to talk not just about clothing, but also about packaging and cosmetics. And I'm very excited to welcome 5 speakers here on stage, which are all experts in different parts of this conversation. Please give a big round of applause for Thomas Hartwig from Leogant. Please welcome Caroline Roth from the Staatliche Akademie der Bildenden Künste Stuttgart.
Go over there.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Please also welcome Alexandra Norton from Stop Microwaste. Please welcome Mike Schitzek from Oceans Now. And last but not least, please welcome Hartwig from EU-Kauf. And there's one seat left for you next to me. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin with the discussion, I'm going to outline a little bit how I imagine this debate to go. I want to introduce each one of our speakers a little more to you. So, as I said, they're all experts in different fields of this conversation, and we're going to link up the dots between them as the next 1 hour and a half go by. So Thomas Hartwig from Leogant brings tap water in its original quality to you. The idea is to innovate at the tap and save the world from drowning in plastic bottles. So we're looking forward to hearing more about his innovation. Caroline Roth is a textile designer at the Staatliche Akademie der Bildenden Künste in Stuttgart. And she is involved in researching experimental and conceptual design approaches using sustainable materials from the ocean. And her current project is called Ein Meer voller Möglichkeiten, a sea of possibilities. Alexandra Norton has founded many things in his life and is one of these sort of serial entrepreneurs, you could say. He is, apart from Langbrett, which is the t-shirt that he's wearing today, also the founder of the non-profit organization Stop Microwaste, which raises awareness about microplastic pollution, and is also the innovator behind the Guppy Friend, a bag that prevents microfibers from traveling from our washing into the oceans, which he'll tell us more about later on. Mike Schutz is a marketing and communication expert and co-founder of the Ocean Now initiative, which we're also looking forward to hearing more about, campaigning expert. And Javier is the founder of a label, a Spanish company that turns plastic waste from the oceans of Thailand, I believe, into fashionable clothing. So I'm very happy to be sharing the stage with all of you here today. Just to give you a quick overview of how I'd imagine the conversation to go, I would like to start by outlining the issues that we're talking about. It's a broad field, and I would love for us all to get a common understanding of all the issues, the problems in how the fashion industry is impacting waste and plastic waste and water. And after that, I want to be able to talk a little bit about all your areas of work and talk about the different kind of innovations that we need to help the world not intoxicate itself with plastic and retain its clean water supplies. And then have a little bit of an outlook toward the end of the conversation, how we can all collaborate together and amplify each other's voices. And of course, invite you to be a part of it. I'd definitely like to leave time for your questions and answers. And we have a fun way of doing that, which I'll explain to you later as we get there. All right then, so I'd love to kick off the round and ask each one of you maybe to outline a little bit from your perspective, where are the biggest problems? What is the most problematic along fashion value chains when it comes to wasting and using plastic materials and using fresh water supplies?
Well, I would say one big issue I was thinking of this morning is actually the fact that we're living in a globalized world. So I'm already like thinking of on the political level. If we say, okay, there could be some regulation introduced to minimize plastic in clothing, also how is this going to be realized if we import so many goods from abroad? Yeah.
So, and that's one thing I think sort of I tried to just touch upon as one example, the plastic, the materials that we produce our clothing out of that go into water systems that perhaps wasn't aware of this being a problem even 10, 15 years ago, but now is becoming quite dramatic. That's also something you're working on.
Yes, I mean, the problem was already there 15 years ago, and I think the biggest problem that we are facing is that on the one hand side, there are no real guardrails from legislation, what's possible and what's not in terms of transparency, also who is responsible for polluting. And then on the other hand, we have the companies that still way too much focus on marketing strategies and legal departments rather than coming up with innovative solutions that really change the status quo. They only do as much as the customer understands and what's legally possible. And then a third thing comes back to the consumer, that we need to make more educated choices. It's a very complicated topic, but we just can't say, oh, we didn't know. So I would say on these three levels, we see problems and how they need to be addressed.
As you said before, I'm a textile designer, so I'm basically at the beginning of the whole supply chain. So what I do is I decide what kind of toxic dyes we use or what materials we use as a fabric. And during my studies, I realized that there are not many like healthy materials I could use. So my way or my idea is to like actively look for them and like reduce microplastic or use fabric and textiles that don't produce microplastic in any way, and also of course the dye and the printing materials we use, that they are not toxic, because we're having them on our skin the whole day, so it shouldn't be toxic at all.
You also try to address some of these issues, but you work with materials that you find, that you upcycle.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we are absolutely in a crucial moment. I think we have the information, we know what's going on, and I think it's a moment whether you can act as if nothing's happening, or you can take action. And I think that action has to come from the companies and a lot from the customers, no? I think it's a combination of both, no? But, and sometimes from the companies, I think you have to start making sometimes hard decisions. For example, at EcoAl, we stopped using polar fleece in 2016, which was our second bestseller. But we know that every time we wash a polar fleece, it's 20,000 microfilaments to the system. So we decided, okay, we don't use that fabric anymore. And that's sometimes hard. And also, I absolutely agree, education, it's very important. I think also consumers have to start making a decision, no? And that's important because, as you say, we use a lot of waste. I mean, we started this project from the ocean in 2015, which we started with 3 fishermen. Now we have over 3,000 fishermen taking waste out of the ocean every day in Spain, now in Thailand, now replicating all the Mediterranean, but only in Spain, 400 tons of waste taken out of the ocean in less than 2 years. That's a lot of plastic.
And we'll dig a bit deeper into how your business processes work. Okay, so we've collected some topics. We've collected the materials that our clothes are made of, which is a huge problem today. We've also talked a little bit about production processes, like using toxic dyes. What other areas are out there? What else needs to be mapped when we talk about the issues and the problems facing today?
Yeah, the issue I'm focusing fully on is, in the end, later the water we are drinking, because for us as a human being, we need to have at least like 2 to 2.5 liters of water every day. And if I get the latest research, almost every river and lake in Europe, what I found out so far, but I guess it's worldwide, has now microplastic in it. The worst was rivers in the UK with about approximately 1,000 pieces per liter of microplastic. And that gets back into the food chain, that gets back into our bodies. So I try to work on two sides. On the one hand, I try to really bring safe and clean water to people, because that's important that we stay healthy, but at the same time we really need to be aware of how our consumer behavior affects the water I'm drinking the same day. And that's how I come into place with the water.
So before we move on and talk a bit more about your individual initiatives, let's see if we've collected everything, or if that, like, to spend one more moment brainstorming to see what else might be out there. Are there other areas in the fashion industry where you say this should be totally banned because it's so toxic and so wasteful, and I can't believe that we're still producing this way?
Well, I can say something that, Ocean Now, we launched our first campaign, and it's actually an area you're just mentioning. So microplastics in cosmetics have still not been banned in Germany, whereas other countries have banned it worldwide. So it's clearly, I mean, you have to distinguish between solid and liquid microplastic, but it's clearly something where we're running behind, and it's just really embarrassing. So. And you can take action. It's like highly needed, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I said in the beginning, we're not just talking about fashion in a closer sense, but cosmetics obviously being a big part of that today. Crazy and sad fact that you just stated there. Are there other fashion area ways of production where we say that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the only solution is to use less, to repair more, to really look what's necessary, because no matter where you look at, it comes at some kind of cost. Let it be water, energy, toxic chemicals, whatsoever. So we need to then go into the way of thinking in closed loop systems, and then when we look at the textile and fashion industry as it is today, we would need a week to name all the problems. Yeah, first of all, we need to get rid of composites materials, so material that you can't use afterwards. We need to start to produce products that you can actually disassemble at the end of their life and that can actually be reused. We need to find replacements for toxic materials, such like, for example, in the shoe sole, the EVA material. We have to actually implement already existing ways of, for example, having an outer sole that prevents microfiber shedding. We need to be transparent with the materials that we are using, and also be aware that also recycled polyester at the end becomes microplastic, and the fish doesn't really care if he's dying or it is dying from virgin polyester or recycled polyester. So there are many topics, and we will take some time, so that the fashion industry will take some time, but at the end the consumer needs to use less and focus and get the information ready and not just believe marketing messages that are out there.
Let's stay with you for a moment. I'm curious to learn a little bit about your journey. You founded, as I mentioned in the beginning, Stop Microplastic, as an initiative, as a campaign, an educational campaign. What made you do that? Was your point of inspiration to say, my business is not enough, I want to do something else?
My business partner, Ollie, and I, we have a company called Langbread where we try to find solutions for these eco-niches. So how can you really get rid of toxic glues and find new ways in production to glue things or to replace materials and have a closed loop cycle. So we know that it's really hard to innovate in that field, but it's not impossible, and there are solutions that are already out there. So we're selling our textiles, which are plastic free, but also other textiles, synthetic textiles, outdoor apparel. And so we thought, okay, we need to communicate that there is a problem. And once we came to that point, we said, hey, this is somehow awkward. We need to tell people whenever you buy synthetic textiles, polyester, polyamide, acryl, whatsoever, that is in socks, in underwear, in yoga pants, in running shirts, and almost everything that we're wearing, we said, okay, we need to inform people about that. But it's somehow awkward if you say there's a problem, but not much you can do. And at that point, we said, let's invent a pragmatic tool that helps us to communicate the problem. The people who use it should get aware of the problem. So we came up with a simple washing bag, which is preventing fibers from breaking at first place. So you wash your synthetic garments inside the bag. And what it does, it reduces fibers from shedding at first place. So 86% on average break less. And those that do break, they're captured by the bag. But it's not so much, the bag won't solve the problem for us. So it's a nice thing and a pragmatic tool that you can use right away. But it's, we need to get beyond that point. And so that's why for us, it's also a starting point for the educational journey. When you use it, you become an expert, how to better wash, what detergent to use, and so on and so forth. And then we said, okay, we're going to take the revenues of that bag and create the non-profit Stop Microwaste, where we educate school kids, companies on the topic of plastic, also above textiles.
So is the bag kind of more of a conversation starter that you also show to kids? There's actually things that you can innovate, develop to make a difference? Or
I mean, the kids hardly do the washing themselves, but they are also interested in the topic. But for them, it's also important to understand how recycling works and how you can avoid plastic at first place. What are the alternatives? And that's the enlightening and optimistic view, because they are very creative in finding solution. Let them be 8-year or 14-year. Things changes. Textiles and cosmetics get more important as they become teenagers. But this is where we get the optimism out, working with the children. But it's also important to have it in companies, because they sometimes use materials. Even the designers aren't really aware where they come from. So working with companies is crucial, because none of those companies really wants to pollute. And they always say, okay, if we would have been aware that this is a problem, we would have done things differently. So it's also the level of knowledge about these kind of things in companies that we need to go after.
Right, and we're going to go on to discuss different ways of educational initiatives too, but maybe, Maike, that's something for you to come in on. Who's the main target group for Ocean Now, and how do you go about building your campaign?
Ocean Now's concept is to accelerate ocean protection on all levels of society, which sounds really huge, but we're kind of focusing on the decision maker level. So right now we've been targeting specifically the Ministry of the Environment. So what we do, we work on a political level, really educate and really get citizens involved. In this case, with a petition, we collected 90,000 signatures. It's even growing further now. And on the other hand, we worked with a media campaign, and right now, microplastics in cosmetics and cleaning products was the project. And we launched a campaign called In Your Face, which has a viral aspect. I just brought this. I thought I might show this. So what we did, we collected microplastics around the world. People from beaches were sending those to us, so to symbolize it's a global issue we're dealing with. And then we have known faces where we demonstrated, okay, well, those faces were actually making a statement in public, why this is important for them, and a statement what the ocean means to them. So this was a media campaign we've been realizing in the last few months, and we wanted to, of course, raise awareness in the first place, and we pretty important. We replicated an artwork by a Hamburg artist on those faces. So this is by Swantje Günzel. So we work with art as a medium to reach people, and this is also something I very much would love to see more in fashion. I mean, this is a little bit my statement. But I think more courage to really wake up people also on the marketing side, because art can reach people on a different level, on an emotional level. And I think that could be done more. It's just a little wish I have. So the political level is a really important factor for myself personally, because I feel like we should work on an impact level. And we handed over our our petition to the Ministry of the Environment. And we very much hope to reach a goal to have a ban in Germany. We're not quite there yet.
Why aren't we there yet? Let me just jump in there for a second. Like, it seems on a European level we're making so much advancement, and finally we have this legislation on banning one-time use plastics in packaging, and the straws and all that stuff is happening. It seems to me in many political areas that German politics are so particularly lobby influenced, and the large corporations have such a strong hold on politics, even more so than in other countries.
Absolutely, yes. So Germany is a lobbying country. It's an industrial, like very strong industrial country. We know that in this specific case, I can just add on to that, there's a voluntary agreement between the industry and the government that has been going for about 5 years to reduce microplastics in cosmetics. Nevertheless, the government or the Ministry of the Environment is not willing to say we will still introduce a ban. So they give this voluntary agreement, and we're wondering, we're called Ocean Now, it's about the now. We can't wait another 5 or 6 or 10 years. On the EU level, it could take up to 6 years, that's their argument, the most recent one, to actually broaden and introduce an EU law, but we don't want to wait for 6 years. So we need to act now, and we see ourselves in the role of putting up the pressure, and we will continue.
Let's get back to that a bit later when we see how can we work together to increase that pressure. I want to circle around like this. We've said that we need innovation to save this planet, and there's different ways to create innovation in fresh water supply and the fashion industry. How did you come up with the innovation that Leogant does?
Actually, because I was producing so much not plastic, but glass bottle waste by myself. And I was really sick and tired of that. And so I needed to find a solution by myself. And this is actually how it started. The water got me interested so much that I started giving talks. People started doing questions, and how I, in the end, founded a solution. And this is how actually Leogant started by myself. It's now actually 10 years ago already, so now the topic with the water and the ocean plastic is really also for us very good, because now the people understand. When I started 10 years ago to talk to the people why not buy any more plastic bottles, it was really not in their heads. So when we say what we actually need, it's about consciousness. It's however you reach it, like by your own, by education, by the products, by your society, by your echo chamber, but it's really about the consciousness you're having. Because if I think about myself, before I founded Leogant, I was working in gastronomy, and I was throwing away so much plastic trash, straws, napkins, everything. And if you're not aware, you're not realizing it. And so it's not like that the people don't want. I think in their heart most of the people want, but we need to give them solutions and education.
So how does your device work? You can attach it to a normal household water,
Yeah.
and then it will filter out what exactly?
So basically what we do is we really turn the tap water into a quality of a very fresh and tasty spring water. It's a mixture of two technologies. The one is a special carbon filter. We take out microplastic, hormones, pesticides, heavy metal, chlorine, copper.
Just read a headline passing by at the weekend about the problem of pharmacy products in water in Berlin.
Yes, yes. So you can take that out. It's a process which works with activated carbon, and later on there's a physical activation. So the surface tension changes in the water is very good to be absorbed by the cells. So it's a very good hydration water. But for me, like you said, you can do it in a private household, so we have systems for the private kitchen, but my focus is more on the corporate side, because there I see the scale. When I think about, for example, an office with about 50 employees, if you maybe an average fashion design company, maybe 50 to 100 people involved, they produce about like 6.2 tons of carbon dioxide and about 23,000 bottles of these small water bottles per year just to get their staff hydrated. So I try to really focus on the plastic in the first place, not to use it. So a water filtration system, no matter if it's my company or whatever, will be standard in the future.
I want to ask you a couple more questions because I'm sure you've been thinking about the same things. When I started reading up on your product and preparing for today, it just kind of struck me that we are in a luxurious situation here that we can drink our tap water. I spend a lot of my work life in other countries where that is not the situation. And for instance, I got to host the first Republica in Accra last year in Ghana, which is literally drowning in plastic. And you have the really devastating situation that people cannot really drink the tap water because it's poisonous. And none of the plastic producing companies, Nestle foremost, is willing to get into any kind of discussion about a more circular approach to their economy and taking back their plastic bottles. Yeah. How is that something that you're trying to address as well, or are you saying I need to start somewhere, so I'm starting here?
I'm trying to address both. So actually you said Ghana. I have a friend in Ghana, so we're starting something there. I can't, it's like just in a brainstorm area, but actually the Ghana, when I saw the pictures from him, I was really devastated to see that. But sure, like to address in Nestle would be one goal. If we are big enough, we would definitely try to do that and try to bring them think full circle, because we cannot get rid of the big global players. We really have to go, in my point of view, inside and change it in some way. And on the other hand, it's for me, if you go for the corporates, like corporates calculate, it's about money in the end. And no matter how you do the calculation, if you change to buy water bottles into a good water filtration system, it will always pay off. So it's much cheaper, it saves a lot of money. And also about sustainability in fabrics, we still have also in the politics that we calculate in too short terms. So we need, if we really want to think sustainable, we need to calculate in like 10, 20, 25 years. And if I have that in my calculation, a more sustainable approach will always also be more profitable for my own business. But this has to change in the perception of the people, and especially on the corporates. And this is where I go. So I offer solutions which are healthy but sustainable and also save a lot of money over long term.
Can we complete the circle? Javier, you've decided to build up a brand using waste materials, and you have created something called sea yarn. Can you tell me about sea yarn?
Well, that comes from the waste from the bottom of the ocean. We had been recycling discarded fishing nets for many years, and one day a fisherman said, Javier, you should come out and fish with me and see how much waste gets caught in the nets every time we go out fishing. No? So unfortunately, I went fishing with him, and it's true. Every time they pull up the nets, mix with the fish, there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of all different types of waste. So we decided to start a project, and as I said before, we started with these 3 fishermen in Alicante, and then we started growing it, and now it's over 3,000 fishermen, and basically from all that waste that comes out from the ocean, a part is plastic bottles, only 10%, the rest is aluminum, glass, polypropylene, a shoe, there's a lot of things.
What
and then from there, we create a yarn.
What happens with the materials
This is
you don't
100%
use?
made from the yarn of the bottom of the ocean of Phuket.
100%.
100%.
How is it technically possible?
How is it
How is it technically possible?
Well, no, that's polyester. It's 100% polyester.
I mean that you take, it's only done by materials that are that were in the ocean before.
Well, no, this is 100% polyester, which is 100% plastic bottles.
Yeah.
But the rest we...
Is it from the ocean or isn't it from the ocean? I'm just asking because we had a couple of years ago when Neonit was still called, still had another name. We had a discussion with the guy from Aquafil, from Econul, and at the end he admitted, yes, of course, it's technically not possible to create 100% yarn out of plastic waste that used to be in the ocean. What they are doing, and this is why we are very critical toward these things like Parley for the ocean and Adidas creating shoes out of ocean waste, because what they do is they use old carpets and they do use fisher nets, but they used to be in Norwegian aquacultures. So they know what they're made of, they know that they don't have toxic particles in it, they know that there are no composite materials, because in order to create the yarn, you need to have a certain degree and a certain purity. And I mean, it's very good that you take out the trash from the ocean, but to say that it's 100% out of ocean waste, from what I know, that is not possible.
Well, I think you're mixing a few things, okay? Econil, what they do is they recycle the fishing nets, okay? That's polyamide. That's not polyester, okay? And they're using nets which are normally in the ports, okay? Then you talk about Parley. Parley is different. Parley, which is the company that works with Adidas, they consider ocean plastic.
I know, explain them. I know what you're talking about.
So
Well, but
Parley...
maybe I'm interested in this, so please continue explaining.
Okay. No, because I think you've been mixing a few things. And Parley, it is a company who works with Adidas. They call ocean filament everything which is 2 miles from the ocean. So all the plastic bottles that you get from 2 miles from the beaches, they consider ocean plastic. Okay, we work with the fishermen. Okay, the fishermen take the waste from the bottom of the ocean, which is a completely different project. Of the plastic bottles we take away, we have to discard around 40% because they don't have the good quality. Which now we made a collaboration with Kingspan, which is one of the most important companies in construction. It's a company from Dublin, and they use what we don't use to make the separations of the buildings. So it's different things. Aquafil is nets. Parley is taking it basically from beaches, and EcoAl Foundation is taking it from the bottom of the ocean.
Yes, but that was not my point, because I think that you have a topic and we talk about recycling polyester, and I pointed out that recycling material becomes microplastic as well. So that is one thing for me, and I assume that you don't share that point of view. It's not possible to create a shoe out of 100% ocean plastic. That's the first thing. And then again, this is only one part of the story. You have to look at the EVA material that you use for the shoe soles. You need to design them in a way that they are no composites material, that you actually can disassemble them at the end of the life. So I'm saying, if it's not a linear thing, it's not a linear process, so it needs to be more things that need to get into consideration. And at the end of the life of a product, the goal needs to be that it can be disassembled into its pieces, and then we can make a new product out of it.
How do you try to address these issues?
It's a process.
I agree.
Obviously, there's a. This is what I meant earlier. Also, working different ends of the spectrum, the products that you create in the end will still be made of materials that will potentially create more plastic waste, even though they're giving a lifespan to something that was already a waste product. So how do you try to go about addressing these issues that Alexandra just raised?
No, I absolutely agree. I think what is great is to create recycle, create circular economy once, twice, 3 times, okay? That's obviously the best thing, no? We started with a very clear concept, which was not using more natural resources. So that's why we started recycling, no? So we believe that it's better somebody takes away that waste, that waste stays in the ocean. So we take it out and we make a new product. The perfect life with that product to make a new product, a new product, a new product. So for example, you see the outsoles we're using now in our sneakers, 40% of our sneakers come from algae, from the ocean, okay? Which is a different material, and it's more organic. So, this is a matter of innovation, R&D, and it takes time. ¿Sabes? We're not a huge company, we're a small company, we do our best, and we invest a lot of innovation, but we try to improve every season.
Who are the kind of, one last question, sorry, the organizations that you try to work with? Because, this is something that I'm guessing, starting out, you need advice on. Like, where do you get people to talk to about how to make your company circular, about how to find things that work well in order to look ahead and try to address those issues of what will happen after your shoe's lifespan ends?
Well, I think we're working with a lot of technological centers around the world, which are helping us a lot in innovation, from Spain, from Hong Kong, from many different places. And luckily, there's a lot of investment right now in all these days in circular economy.
Yeah.
No? For example, we've been working a lot in circular economy with the cotton. No? Cotton, people are not aware, but cotton is not very sustainable. No? At the end of the day, it uses too much water. And you can see it, no? When the Russians decided to give water to the cotton plantations in Kazakhstan.
The pesticides, the fungicides.
Exactly. They dried out the Aral Sea in 2 years. It's a desert, no? So at the end, it's not only, here there's a mixture of many things. Also, we have to rethink the business model. At the end of the day, if we keep on consuming t-shirts of €3, which each of them consume 3,000 liters of water, there's not enough water for 10 billion people more in the next 20 years, no? So, I mean, it's many things, and I think each of us do our best.
And I think maybe this is a question that we can get to in a minute as well. I think something that we need to ask all of ourselves, how much of the products that we create are conversation starters, are marketing products to get the conversation going in a certain direction, even though they might not be the final solution of what we're actually trying to go for. I'd love to get to you and to talk a little bit about how your research fits into all of this. Cotton, I think, was a great keyword to use. In my mind, as a consumer, you know, there was a time, maybe 15 years ago, where we thought, oh, we need to actually look about using man-made materials in the fashion industry because of the terrible conditions that people are planting cotton under. And maybe this is a fairer, more sustainable way of making fashion from man-made materials. And now we've raised awareness and have understood that by that we're really ruining our environment and releasing all this plastic rubbish into it. So you're working on looking at natural materials that are more sustainable to use and grow than perhaps some of the ones we've used historically.
I try to. I mainly use natural materials like silk, wool, linen, and cotton, even though I try to use recycled cotton, which has a lower CO2 footprint. My main work, because I'm not a company, so I don't have any agenda. I do my private research. I'm funded by the government. So I do experiments with algae as a way of designing textiles. I use agar as a bioplastic, which is dyed with algae color, like the blue spirulina and the red algae. And I don't have an agenda, so I can just experiment and see what comes out of it. And if there is a result that can be used in the industry or maybe in a smaller circle for fashion, for interior. And of course I'm quite limited with the colors, with the materials, but within my borders there's a huge universe of structures, of like feelings I can experience, and textile design is quite a huge field, so we can design basically everything, but to focus on a circular way of designing, you are limited anyway. So I think it's quite fun to play with this limitation and actually see what comes out of the idea to have a fully recyclable and circular textile collection.
So how long until all our shoe soles are made from algae?
They are already made from algae with the Bloom Foam, I guess, is the producer. I tried to get in contact, but they were quite a small company back then. So I'm not quite 100% sure how it's done, but I think my way of working with algae is to make the consumer aware of that the textiles can't be pitch black for 10 or 20 years, that textiles change over the years, that we experience this change in the textile and live with it and enjoy it and repair it and, you know, change it, and maybe, you know, having a system where the textiles or the fashion comes back to the producer, be repaired, you know, get a new print on it, get a new layer of bioplastic on it, and then, you know, be sent back to the consumer.
Do you find that plastic is a thing we don't actually longer need? It's really just that it's so ever present because it's been pushed upon us by industry, and it's actually possible for us to replace it as of now for most things, or nearly all things that we might require.
I actually don't think that plastic is such a mean, evil thing. I think just that the plastic we use right now, it was not composed as a resource that comes back. If you said in Ghana, it's like plastic bottles all over the place, like why don't companies calculate with the cycle back of their own materials and use them again? I mean, it's resources out there. We're just wasting it.
Isn't there, this is just what I learned, that there's a limited life cycle. You can only recycle that many times before plastic material will be the waste that ends up in our ecosystems.
Yeah. But there I think where science steps in. So I think if science pushes it a little further and do research on plastic that is fully recyclable endlessly, we can stop saying that plastic is evil. I think that natural material on the one hand is perfectly fine, but it's not as doable as plastic. On the other hand, the plastic we use right now is not as good as it should be. So I think we need to develop in that direction.
You want to jump in there?
I could jump in. I'm kind of, I do agree, yeah, there's all like the 4 R's, reuse, reuse, recycle. There's like so many different interpretations of the 4th R, but we need to really address all levels. I mean, the recycle level is one level, reduce is, as Alexander addressed earlier, is the other level. Reuse, having a mindset of what you just said, using the clothes again and getting used to this black will not be the same in like a few weeks, you know, like once you've washed it. So it's really all levels we have to address that's what I think. Because if you just look at the production of plastic is a side product of oil extraction, and we want to get away from fossil fuels anyways. I mean, at least it's a healthy thinking into that direction, because just the CO2 in the production of plastic is already not good for the planet. So I would just like to always think in a broader scale. And I know it's a tricky one, because there's people stepping in, financing the ocean cleanup. You know, it gets financed by Coca-Cola. You know, there's people stepping in on the other side saying, oh, great, he's cleaning up the ocean, so we can keep on producing. We have a good, you know, like we just give him a lot of money. So there's really like a very fine line, and we have to, I think, be careful of... Like
absolutely, but I don't think that we can change the mindset of the people as fast as it should be changed.
I have a question about that I want to throw out to all of you. I have a couple of cultural questions, actually. Why is that? Our mindsets were changed in such a short period of time the other way around. It's just 2 generations ago, maybe just 1 generation ago, that people had a completely different way that they dealt with and treated their clothes and fashion and the longevity of fashion. And I think the existence of and the sort of mass throwing out of as plastic has a lot to do with that, actually. So the way that my grandmother, who was super into fashion and a great seamstress, made her clothes, bought her clothes, treated her clothes, and wore her clothes is totally different to how my generation does. And if it was possible to change the mindset in that direction so quickly, there's some great articles out there how exactly that happened in the plastic industry, for instance. People used to consider a plastic cup something really, really valuable and something that you should keep and wash out and recycle, up until there were huge campaigns to teach us not to do that and to see this as a throwaway material. So if it was so possible the one way around, why does it have to take such a long time the other way around?
It reminds me of the time when I was a proper student and I only had like about 300, 400 euros per month to live. Now I have a little bit more. It's really hard to get back to those 400 euros per month. You know, if you open up and if you are used to spending money and, you know, buying new clothes once in a while and having shopping as a hobby, it's really hard to step back again and, you know, consider every move you make.
Yeah, it might be hard to change behavior, but I think we have, there are different problems that we are facing, especially in Germany. If you produce plastic, it has a tax exemption. The oil that you get to produce that plastic, it has a tax exemption, so you don't have to pay any taxes for that material. So that is clearly a market fail. So we have so many possibilities of setting the guardrails, what governments and legislation can do to trigger behavior change. Today, it's impossible for a customer to go somewhere without either spending a lot more money, or you can't go shopping and find anything that doesn't contain plastic. However, plastic per se, I would agree, isn't bad. It becomes bad when it enters in the environment. It's a really great product. It's durable, it's light, it's flexible, and it enables the lifestyle that we have today. It just, these properties become a problem when it ends in nature, because it never fades away. And that's, so legislation can do a lot. And then at the end there is the customer, and also here, we've just walked over the fair and we saw brands that are at a green eco fair show, and they're offering bio-based bags. And everybody thinks, okay, I can just put them out and throw them away. But actually what they're doing is they make people not change the behavior. They do explain it's okay to take a material that I use 10 minutes and then it stays in nature forever. And this is the thing, let me just mention that really quick. If you have bioplastic, what's happening is, first of all, it's made out of natural material like cornstarch or sugar, so it's in competition with the food industry. And then it's somewhere made in South America, then shipped to China, and it comes back for products to Europe. So already from that perspective, it doesn't make much sense. And then there is a DIN norm, 13432, which says it needs to fall into pieces in 12 weeks, smaller than 2 millimeters, up to 90%. But they're not gone. It's microplastic. If you put them out in nature, they never, even bio-based plastic, they don't fade away. It's only if you have professional compost facilities. So when these, first of all, they're not recyclable, and if they enter in nature, they have the same negative aspects than the other plastic. And this is the point, it doesn't make us change the behavior, because we think it's okay to take a plastic bag.
But the question was, how do we change it? Not that we don't change it. So for me, I'm more interested in a solution, because we know all the problems. And
sorry, most of them don't know the problem. I've been talking to so many people.
I think that right now we know most of the problems, and for me it's like how to address and change it. And so the fashion for me is one solution, because the fashion industry, the art, and the music industry, these are how we're gonna be influenced all. And right now we're living in a digital world. Everyone wants to be like lifestyle be seen by others, all the Instagram and social media. So we have that, and I think we should use that. That means if I, for example, get what Carolina said in one of our talks, is if I do recycled fashion, it needs to be designed. It needs to be as good, and it needs to feel as good as like new made materials. So what we need to do is we need to come up with solutions. I would say, which are as sexy as everything else, or the best would be they're more sexy. And then the people will follow, then the politics will follow, because I don't believe in the politics, as Germany is a lobby country. So for me, the fashion would be one really, really important solution, that they go forward, they invest, they make the research, and they make fashion that they are so interesting for me to buy that I'm not interested to buy anything more. Others will see it, they will ask me, wow, what's this, what you're wearing? I have a story to tell, I can post it on my Instagram, so everyone wins in the end. And this is, I guess, how we need to get the people to be involved in the sustainability. And that's education by wearing something, for example.
So, I mean, I think that's come a long way. If we walk through the halls here, there's no more air of this sort of, oh, I knitted something in a corner and that's sustainable, you should wear this instead of your fashionable item. Like that, thankfully, is gone. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of designers on the stage the next 2 days that really represent that as well. That design and sustainability is a new class of design, maybe, I would say. However, regulation, I'd like to get back to, because it still seems to be such an important factor. We live sort of in this dichotomy, and I think the world is moving more and more toward these two extremes of the sort of, here's your mass-produced market and the sort of everyday fix, and here's your quality market for an elite group of people who can afford it. And at the moment, this is still a kind of elitist conversation because everybody else is shopping at Primark. So I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is how do we address that target group and how do we address those producers and how do we get them to come on board this discussion we're having? And you mentioned a couple of tools with regulation. Sweden, yay, has introduced tax benefits for people getting stuff repaired. And this doesn't just go for fashion. It goes for the umbrella or the laptop or all my other consumer goods out there. That's one tool, perhaps. What other tools like that can we think about? Or how else do we get those big mass retailers, producers on board?
I've been to Sweden last week talking to a big fashion manufacturer, you all know, and then sometimes they are fully aware of the problem. Yet they say, yes, but we have a slightly different view on things. So I'm at the point where I think we won't get anywhere without regulation because it's so much about margins and profits that they won't change without the pressure from legislation and the customers. They start to change once people ask things. They come to the store and say, hey, but isn't that a problem with microplastics and why didn't you do this and that? And this is the moment where they change. And if you use fashion music and the cool things in life to trigger that, then that's great. But I'm at the point where I think the companies, just because you say, hey, there is a market and you can maybe even possible to earn more in the future, they look at the short-term results and they're not going to change. Legislation and customer education to push them to ask the right questions and to challenge them.
My microphone, you're nodding along because that's something that you try to do as well.
Yes, so I do agree on everything that has been said, but the acceleration and the speed we need, it's gonna, like, we need something different. On one hand, I'm thinking, yes, if consumers get together, create pressure, there's a demonstration, there's a protest, it gets into media, there's maybe partly shocking images, but also a really in-depth for love on this planet in a mix. Yeah, so to really shake up the public, but also like, yeah, media and politics unfortunately can only be reached via media. That is really needed, and I don't want to open a new topic, but really the question of profit and the indefinite growth we're facing, like this, you know, the idea of wanting to grow indefinitely and ruining our planet at the same time is like the elephant in the room that people don't really want to talk about a lot. But I see it, you know.
Yeah, because just it's such a big issue. How do we move away from our capitalistic growth economy into something that might work for society in future?
I don't think that has to be contradictory. I think that even the big brands, they think about new business models and they see opportunities in circular economy and introducing new materials. So there definitely is, there are markets and they know that they can't sell as much as they used to do in the past, but they look into new business fields. So growth in terms of selling more, no, but in a smart new way, there is also, that could also be profitable.
That sounds very hopeful. Yep. I'm happy to hear that. Is that something that you're sharing also? Is there a readiness to have a conversation about different kinds of growth?
I would say yes, but in the fashion industry, I would say you have much more knowledge than how is it like with the big companies? Are they interested in changing? Or would you say it's just like an advertisement right now stage?
Well, it's difficult for me to talk from them, no? I think a lot of people are starting to get aware. Obviously, when you have a big company which is very profitable with one business model, it's not easy to change it, no, to another business model quick, no? So I think they're starting with capsule collections or little thing where it's true they put a lot of marketing behind, but they're still not changing a big percentage of the company, no? But so it's easier for the new companies, the young companies to start because you already start with that, no, philosophy and with that rule, so it's easier for you. But I think this is not only, we always talk not only about the plastic problem. I think there's a huge waste problem in the world. So it's not only plastics, it's electronic, it's a lot of things. And it's a much wider problem, which has a lot to do with how we consume, what we're doing, etc. So, I mean, we're getting boats out of Europe every week full of electronic waste, no, for Africa, every week. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. And that's a huge problem, which nobody's recycling and nobody's doing anything.
And
so there are many problems going on.
And many of the things that you said earlier about how we glue our shoes together, of course, are very, very prevalent in how we glue our laptops together and make it very hard to get the right bits back out of them. I have one more question.
No, and also, that is complicated. Sabe. We used last season probably the most sustainable, water-efficient glue in the market for one sneaker, and the result was that after 8 months, a lot of consumers started complaining. So at the end of the day, consumers are very, very, very exigent. We did capsule collection with natural dyes in a factory 3 hours from Bangalore in India, and when we shipped it to our clients, they said, wow, but there's 10 different blues here. We don't want 10 different blues. I said, well, that's natural dye. So not everybody is prepared for all those kind of things, because people want a sneaker that lasts you 10 years.
I think it's great that you're bringing this up.
Sometimes doesn't have the same strength, no?
It's exactly, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I think it's great that you're bringing this up, because it's something that I had to think of earlier when you said about the sort of longevity of things and natural materials. So, I mean, this is just my take. Like, I think 10 years ago, your USP of saying we make our stuff from plastic comes from the ocean wouldn't have been as sexy as it is today. Like, I think today that's a good reason for people to go and buy your products, because you feel you're doing something good and you're there, you know, fighting climate change, and it's become a huge different kind of marketing tool. Philosophical question. In our fast fashion world, and in a life where people would rather like buy a new thing every week and like have shopping as a hobby, as you said earlier, can that not be a great tool? Can the individuality and the shorter lifespan of naturally made products not be something that in a couple of years is going to be a great marketing tool, because it taps into you being able to own more, have a good conscience about it in a lesser time, and something that's unique?
It should be. I mean, we're all for individualism. We all want to be very unique, and still we wear basically all the same shirts. Every shirt has the exact same color. Why don't we just accept the fact that indigo is just creates 10 different shades of blue? It should be totally fine. I just don't get the concept. And even if the black is not pitch black, maybe it's a shade of dark gray. Well, let's be it. Or just work with it. Just do something new. Embroider on it.
That would be great, but that's unfortunately very little people.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
And
I'm
especially
absolutely aware of that.
the buyers and quality control guys of big department stores, they won't pass you the production.
But that, I think this combines the two of you. Yeah, how can you make that cool to have fashion that is not standardized, that has these little faults? Yeah, and I think at this point where that becomes cool, then maybe also bigger companies may change. And also again, I don't want to say we have to change things, but it's also up to us. I mean, we all wear the same shoes that we see from some kind of hip-hopper wearing in the video from Nike or Adidas, and we don't question why are they so white. So there's titan dioxide in it, and this is toxic, this is unhealthy for us, it's unhealthy for the planet, yet we do it. So if we are able or willing to accept a not super shiny white, then we would do a lot. And if we know that and request that to companies and combine the two things that you have said, then this might change.
It's changing.
So too,
Yeah.
It's changing, but it's not changing from one day to another. It is changing.
Everybody understands
Yeah.
that also, I mean, from my perspective, there are many things that companies can already do today. They can use a different material that shed less microplastic, or they can do a different seam. They can use a natural material sole on the bottom so that there's no microfiber shedding. So there's lots of things that they can do right away. But overall, you're right, they won't be able to change the whole business model overnight. And I think we acknowledge them, and what we try with the Guppy Friend is also go on the journey with them. Because this bag, as funny as it sounds, gives us the opportunity to talk to these brands that otherwise would never have talked to us. So we can use that as a tool for change.
I mean, I don't want to be matchmaking on the panel, but and that's the final round I'd like to get to is collaboration, because there seems to be so much synergy between the bag that you've created and your label and the product range that you created, because giving those hand in hand, you're saving ocean from the plastic, and then you're preventing more of it going back into the oceans during the washing. It seems like a great synergy there already. Before we start that third topic round on the panel, I'm going to see if there's any audience participation requests. You can give me a sign of hand if you want to ask a question or give a comment. I love that you're raising your hand first, because the microphone is right under your chair. So if you just check, if you can grab that little box below you.
Yeah, I can see it.
That is your microphone.
Perfect.
And please make sure you speak right into the black top.
Okay, perfect.
Hold it very close.
Very, very close. Okay, I have one question for you, Javier, because you were asking the question before if it's possible to make polyfiber only from ocean waste, or do you need some percentage of virgin fiber to create it? Or
At the end, the quality of the yarn depends, in our experience, of the quality of the polymer. And the quality of polymer depends on the quality of the waste. No?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's much easier to mix what you get from the ocean with plastic bottles you recycle from land. It's easier because those plastic bottles are more are cleaner. Okay.
yeah, I understand it, but
So-
I ask if
but
you
it's
use
possible.
virgin fiber.
It's
to-
possible. The only thing is like the recycled cotton. Is it possible to have 100% recycled cotton? Yes. Can you make all kinds of qualities? No. For example, I'm not able to make thin T-shirts qualities for women because the yarn breaks.
I
But this
totally
is the
get
same
the
thing.
point. I'm asking, are you using 100% ocean waste, or are you using also virgin fibers?
This is 100% this one.
This one?
This one.
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Okay?
One more question, because I just had the idea when you were talking about the shoe that it only lasts around 8 months, and then the customers are complaining. Maybe wouldn't it be a way to educate also the end consumer that it would break earlier and make like a repair kit for them, that they can glue their soles or bring it to the... Isn't it? I mean, I work in the textile industry for such a long time, and I find that the end consumer is much more forward than the shop owner.
No.
No?
Well, for some things, yes.
Yes.
For quality reasons, no.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, what we did is it was here, this part, so what we did is we put 3 stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept on using the same glue, but we put 3 stitches. It was a bit less statical, but then it performed much better, okay? But at the end of the day, people, so you cannot tell people, okay, you're buying a sustainable product, but it's going to be worse technically, it's going to have worse design, it's going to be more expensive, because then they say, okay, well,
I totally get your point. It's only about...
so if you buy a
selling it.
sneaker for
Yeah.
your kid and after 6 months it breaks, you're angry. Most of mothers are angry.
But
And I think it's good. Sorry,
Yeah.
maybe we'll check if there's some other questions,
Yeah.
but not too much of a dialogue. Maybe a lot of that is just also iteration of your product and testing it in different ways. Of course, it's sad if a consumer sees themselves as a test case, but there's maybe also some room to play with that to see how you can involve your customers to improving your product.
I mean, Patagonia did this in the first
Yeah.
place. You can just return it, and as long as it's repairable, you get it repaired back. And I think that should be standard for all fashion-producing companies, that you have a free return. As long as you can repair it, you will get it back repaired.
And that's also tapping into perhaps sort of traditional values of what it means to have a quality product, because I have completely different ways of addressing the make of what I would consider a quality product than going back to the high street fashion brands and saying, hey, this broke after a year, where everybody would be like, yeah, it's your own fault, right?
Hi. I'm a fashion designer, and
here, no?
I work for a company who is doing also outdoor and sportswear made of recycled polyester. And currently we're trying to also tackle the plastic waste in the ocean by using bio bags to pack our garments, because for us we also own our own factory, and for us it was the biggest waste using one single plastic poly bags to ship the garments to the consumer or the shops, and then it would just be discarded in nature or recycled. Put this into brackets depending on the country where it lands. So I want to ask Langbret, any of you who own brands, if you have found like an alternative to poly bags to pack the garments.
Yes and no. So first of all, the plastic bags that come with each items, it's hard to replace them, because if you use different materials and you ship them, you can in many cases throw away the textiles they come in. So we at Langbret, the things that we produce in Germany and that we deliver to our stores, they are in a closed loop take-back system. So you can just zip them, we send them back, they reproduce, we use the same bags. To scale that to bigger companies is obviously problematic or not so easy. What we have done with not Langbret but with Stop Microwaste, the NGO, is to bring a concept to life that we call a Poly Loop project, where we have a circular economy for a circular closed loop for these poly bags. So they are turned into these flakes again, into the pellets, into the noodles, and then immediately back into these bags. But using other materials like the bio-based cornstarch and sugar and whatever is out there, I mentioned that earlier. That's not a solution to the problem.
Yeah, and it actually failed because it has only 2 years shelf life, longevity, and we tested this solution. And after 8 months, where we packed the garment inside those cassava potato bags, it was already biodegrading inside our warehouse because of the humidity problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great that your company thinks about that topic. There are many European Outdoor Group and others have a big workings group on analyzing what is plastic actually doing. Sometimes it's to store it more convenient, and how can that be replaced with other things. But so our approach to this is also to think in circularity and use the material over again, and use existing transportation ways to reduce CO2.
You have to work faster. I'd like to do a third, we talked about the problems, and now we talked a little bit about the solutions, and now to close with, I'd like to speak about collaboration, and maybe starting with you. Luckily, I get really excited about this. I think there are a lot of people out there kind of doing similar research to you. I met a lady at a conference 2 years ago who's also working on algae, but I also know of people who are makers, and especially like biohackers and stuff, trying to create different forms of materials, plastic-like materials out of new materials. Do you have a network? Do you all hang out in like one chat room and exchange notes?
I think the best platform I saw on the internet is Materium, it's called, I guess. So they're an open source platform where you can research different ways of bioplastic. So what I call bioplastic is not bio-based plastic. It is, for example, made out of gelatin or algae or, I don't know, eggshell and different resins. So they're open source research platform, and you can just start with their recipes and go a little further as I did. So I changed the recipes for my needs, and it opens up a whole new area of research or experimenting. And I think every designer is quite happy to, see what comes up in that bio-based research.
Is there an openness to sharing? I know a platform that's called Materia Brazil. I didn't know it was also internet, but it does exactly that. Open source materials, ready to share. is there an openness for sharing the research you come up with? Because I can see it also being a very competitive field, like, oh, I made something new, I need to patent it.
It is quite hard because, of course, we do put a lot of time and energy in it. But on the other hand, if only one person is working sustainable, that doesn't really help. You know, it's like 0.1% out of all the others. So I'm working on an open source platform on my own and share my recipes, as well as if designers come up to me or producers come up to me, I will figure out a way of producing whatever they like.
Cool. I'd like to also, sort of with the open source angle, move over to you, Javier, because I'm guessing your company cannot fish all the plastics out of the oceans. Are you the kind of founder that says, here's my business model, copy paste it because we need more of this happening? Or how do you try to scale your efforts?
Well, obviously, it's important. I mean, figures say that there's over 8 million tons of waste coming into the ocean every year. So if you take out 400, it's not enough. But basically, so you need to start working, avoiding that waste to come into the ocean. No? And unfortunately, that's coming through the rivers. So it should be quite easy to tackle if there was, I mean, people wanted to do so, no? So we're starting projects in trying to avoid that waste coming into the ocean. And then we do a lot of collaborations every year, and we do a lot of projects with many companies. And we share what we do, and we share our know-how. The same way we've shared it with the government of Thailand. We work with them, and we go there every 3 months. We help them with all our know-how with our program in Spain so that they can replicate it in us. And now we're starting in Italy with a few ports in Toscana, and we're helping them with the know-how. So yeah, I think it's very important.
Did you all know about each other before coming to this panel?
Yes.
You knew each other?
Except you, I knew everybody, yeah.
Is it is it the kind of scene where you think it's still kind of a small world and more people need to come in it, or have you seen it grow over the past years?
I have seen it grown a lot, but sometimes I think you're also walking too much in your own echo chamber, so you maybe get a little irritated if it's the real world or if it's just like your world. But I see that's a big engagement coming more and more and more, and especially now, if you just look on the media, I'm not so good, I don't have a TV since 20 years, but some artists you know, and now I see like Facebook, like movies from the guy from Aquaman who did this short clip about smashing people's plastic bottles away. So that was really funny for me, but by seeing that, that's why I came to the art and music. It's like, I see they engage. They have been doing so much like industry in the last 20 years with actually not everybody, but most of them no story, no content. And now they really want to get content, they want to get engaged, they want to do something because they are like influencers or famous or whatever. So I see, yes, there is a change, 100%.
And who are the people that you're trying to reach out with for like maybe also cross-industry collaborations? Like I could imagine, like how great would it be if all the hotels in the world agreed not to have plastic bottles in the rooms, but to use your taps instead, you know? Like,
yes.
And I understand that you're trying to think big like that. Like, who are the kind of allies that you're looking for to achieve that?
Absolutely, big hotel chains would be one of the target groups I would like to address. Yeah, so gastronomy would be my goal, but also the food and beverage. If you see on transportation, like airplanes, there's like so much one single-use plastic, but also Emirates is going to ban that from the next year. What I saw, or at least try to reduce it by 90%. I saw that New York is gonna ban the plastic bags. So there's a lot of movement right now, and I think there's coming more and more interest now from the industry side. And I guess the food and beverage from my side, except to fashion, is one of the most largest producers of one-time use plastic. So I go there especially.
And then that leads in perfectly to the sort of advocacy and lobby question. It's something that fascinates me. You just mentioned the banning of plastic bags. So as you gathered, I work a lot in different international contexts, and especially on the African continent. And last year, 2 years ago, when I traveled last to Kenya, they had just introduced the ban on plastic bags. And here, everybody I spoke to was like, oh, this is never going to work. You know, the Kenyan government, and that's not going to happen. But like months later, you couldn't see a plastic bag in the country. And that's Kenya and not Germany. And I know we've really advanced in some areas, but it seems like we, you know, full circling back to what we were saying earlier, we have so much to do when it comes to creating incentives and also passing the right kind of regulations. How do you try to cooperate internationally with other campaigns and with other civil society organizations to amplify what you're trying to do? Michael first, maybe.
Yeah, on the EU level, we're part of a coalition called Beat the Microbead. I mean, they don't only address microbeads, as in the beads that in the peeling, but also like microplastics in cosmetics on any other level. And it's 99 NGOs globally that getting together. Actually, it's more than Europe. Sorry. Yeah. So. And yeah, there is talks. It really makes sense to stay in the loop to see what's happening on an international level. Of course, that is the biggest challenge always, but it's really good to see there's countries already going the path and really orient yourself, and also like us talking to the Minister of the Environment, of course, like looking at Sweden, introducing a ban, giving companies half a year to phase out products to then really have, like, you know, from 6 months onwards, only products without microplastics, for example. It's really good to be oriented on an international level. I think it's very important. That said, of course, it adds to the complexity. So I think it's important to be interested, to look at the good models, the role models that are out there, and then really try to break it down on your own national level and look at the hurdles. And it's really interesting you're mentioning the lobbying aspect, because that really is something I don't like about the country I'm born in at all. So this, people are concerned. Yes, they are. On the other hand, do they open their mouth? Are they brave? Do they have courage? You know, that's really something where I'm like, don't lean back and, you know, yeah, that's little around the corner. I can just go shopping, just take another plastic bag. But really question yourself and really challenge your comfort zone. That would be my message to everyone. And it is hard. It is really hard. It's not easy. But I think something's happening, and I agree with what you said earlier. There's something happening, and keeping up the dialogue is really important, yeah.
And there were so many creative ideas voiced on this panel alone, and I'm sure there are so many more out there when it comes to things that we could actually fix and could change in a relatively short period of time, whether it's like encouraging people to buy second-hand clothing through VAT exemptions or other forms of consumer taxes, trying to encourage different kinds of fabrication, what you mentioned earlier, just to make recycling life easier, the Swedish repair tax, like all these issues that we touched on. Where do we join forces to just drill that message home and get there quicker?
If you want to aggregate it, it needs that each of us needs to admit that our contribution to protect nature matters, so that we say, okay, somebody else will take care of the problem. And then, as I said earlier, that we are very open and aware of misleading advertisement. Don't believe what it said, even if you read it in the newspaper. Try to get your own picture around it. Use less. And it starts with small little things. People keep on telling, okay, but I do this and this and that, and then they have a smoke and they just throw the cigarette on the street. And that is also plastic, toxic plastic that goes into the water. So also questioning, even if we think we already are living according to a certain standard, a certain eco-standard, just question yourself and try to become a better in that way. And in terms of companies, I totally agree with you. The challenges that we have as society, or that we have as the textile industry, we won't solve that alone. There won't be one company that's going to solve that alone. So we need this experimental work. We need companies trying things out, even if they are not at 100% yet. We need to find creative new business models and also learn from the failure. And if you want to see something as a positive note, that is happening. That is truly happening in the market. If that is fast enough, we will see.
Yeah, I think we should also focus more on solutions, not only the problem. Because I think if we consumers, if we only focus on the problems, we are overwhelmed by the whole, oh my God, our world is going to die. And if you focus on solutions, you have the feeling that you can, like, step by step, do a little towards a healthy environment. Just focus on things you actually can do, and don't be like stunned by the idea that everything is going down the river.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I would love to have that be encouraging closing words for this panel and to our audience. I'd like to thank all 5 of you.